Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Nelson, for your inspiring words, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this very prestigious investor conference. The mission we have at NHOA is actually very simple. We want to lead the energy transition, and we really believe that we must do it now. As Antonio Guterres told the world leaders in just a few days ago at the opening of the COP27 UN Climate Summit in Egypt, we are on a highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. Our planet is fast approaching a tipping point that will make the climate catastrophe inevitable and, even more importantly, irreversible. But the question we have to face is, first and foremost, what the energy transition stands for. And this is true, as Chairperson mentioned. I mean, we do have global targets. The increase to a maximum of 2 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial era, with the target to go net zero by 2050. Most importantly, in the context of those very ambitious targets, we have also very concrete action plans to transform those global commitments from slogans to real and achievable targets. One example is the Fit for 55 package that has been approved by the European Commission, a legislative measure that is aimed at reducing CO2 and green gases emissions by 55% between now and 2030. You know, Europe is trying to be the first continent ever to become climate neutral by 2050. And this goal was formalized back in 2019 by the European Green Deal, which has been signed by all 27 member states, that recognized the imminent threat posed by the climate change and took a binding and bold commitment. First of all, a commitment that has been taken in very special circumstances, with skyrocketing energy prices, and with also very bold measures, like the full phase-out of internal combustion engine vehicles and cars by 2035. So this is not anymore a vision or a hope. This is reality. So the question is, why Antonio Guterres, speaking of us, is still having our foot on the accelerator? Reality is that as of today, we already are at plus 1.2 degrees today, compared to the pre-industrial levels. And the situation, therefore, is very urgent and critical. So if we want to do something real in that direction, we have to understand what the drivers of the energy transitions are. And if we look to the breakdown of direct CO2 emissions by industry, we immediately realize that the first priority we should set is emissions in transportation and power generation that represent over 50%, almost 60% of the power generation, of the CO2 footprint, which this is the strong majority of green gases emissions globally. Then obviously we have industrial emissions, we do have cement, residential, transportation, but transportation and power generation have to be priority number one. The third thing to do so is to play a massive shift in the power generation. And we clearly see what to do. Today we have 84% of the power generation which is represented by fossil fuels: oil, gas, coal. Nuclear represents 6% and renewables 11%. So what we have to do by 2050 is very simple. We have simply to inverse the power generation mix we do have to radically turn the tables. We should reach 84% of renewables. And so the first question we have to face is how to do it. How to do it in principle is very simple, because we can call it renewables, but we all know, unfortunately, that 85% of the renewable power generation is certainly not concentrated during the day. And unfortunately, the sun does not shine at night. On top of that, we must consider efficiency, because we all know that the nominal kilowatt power of a solar panel is not generating electricity 8,760 hours a year. Essentially, if you look to the irradiation data of Central Europe, we can consider 12% as the yearly equivalent of solar production on average. So, solar is not shining at night, efficiency is an issue, but even worse, we have also a second problem, which is grid stability. A very technical problem, but a very important one, because renewables are not baseload, renewables are not stable, renewables are intermittent. I mean, intermittency is stabilized today and has to be stabilized in order to put renewable energy into the grid and transforming it into stable energy on demand, which is what we need. Unfortunately, as of today, the reality is that we continue to use gas and coal plants to cope with that intermittency. That's the reality all over the world. In order to give all of us renewable, yes, but stable power. But you can clearly see that this is a nonsense to use gas and coal in order to stabilize intermittent renewable power. And the easiest solution, ladies and gentlemen, to the problem is obviously storing that electricity. This is the reason why energy storage is by far the game changer of the next decade. It is a matter of fact, today all over the world, solar panels are being coupled. Large solar plants are being coupled with energy storage systems to transform renewables into dispatchable power. We can clearly see in this slide the exponential growth we will have in the next 8 years in terms of cumulative capacity of energy storage by region. We are talking about multiplying by over 30 times the current installed capacity of energy storage, and the rationale of that growth is obvious. Generate stable, renewable power even at night, and cope with instability generated by higher renewables penetration. The second key element, you remember we're talking about power generation and then transportation. So the second key element to consider when talking about energy transition is certainly the transportation sector. But again, we have to focus. We do need to focus first and foremost on majority of those transportation emissions. And 70% of those transportation emissions are generated by road transportation, passenger cars in particular. And these need to be set as priority number one. And the solution also in this case is very easy, which is electric mobility. The only problem is that car drivers and even electric vehicle drivers do not want to change their habits and customer journey. They are not ready to wait for hours to charge their vehicles, particularly when before it took just a matter of minutes to refuel your petrol car that everybody used since you were born. So in Europe, we installed thousands of chargers, which is a good news. The only problem is that we installed thousands of slow AC chargers that unfortunately charge at a very slow pace, taking hours to fully recharge a vehicle. And this is obviously unacceptable from a customer standpoint. And therefore, fast and ultra-fast charging needs to be the top priority. Priority in which charging a vehicle in a matter of minutes is a necessity in order to unleash the real potential of electric mobility. However, there is also a very last problem in mobility, which is that this would eventually pose a problem again at the grid level. From this slide, we can easily see 3 scenarios describing how much power we will need to reinforce and expand our, in this case, European grid, but the same reason is applicable to globally because of EV penetration. Typically, the question is how much energy we need in order to charge that amount of electric vehicles. I mean, we do have the answer, obviously, to this question. I mean, between 9 and 12% of the current global energy demand, which is almost a negligible amount of energy given the current installed capacity we have globally. The point is that this is not the right question. The real problem, the real question is the grid capacity, so the ability of the grid to instantly absorb power. To give an idea, cars are in general parked 95% of the time. And when it comes to electric mobility, 95% of the time connected to the grid. When we have then to assess their potential impact at grid level in terms of instant power, and even in the most conservative scenario, so the down one, you see here, the European Union will need by 2030 over 53 gigawatts of power available for public charging. Just to give an idea, slightly more, 55 gig in a country like Italy, which is 60 million people, is the maximum peak power of the country in mid-July, when it's very hot outside and all air conditioning is switched on. So please imagine a grid reinforcement and the grid expansion for something that has to manage at least the maximum power peak of a country. If we look to the more severe scenarios, like the one that we have elaborated based on the ACEA data, the European Automobile Manufacturers Association, in 2030 we will need over 150 gigawatt available instant power and over 400 in 2040. So this means over 10 times the maximum power peak of a country, which in this case is Italy, but you can take any other country as a reference. So essentially, a huge demand for instant power, which will require a great expansion, which means eventually investments, that will take years, if not decades, to be carried out in some areas, and that eventually will need to be repaid by us in our energy bills. Then, what is the solution? Again, the solution is exactly the same one, which is storing electricity, even if, in this case, it's less obvious. Why that? If we use, let me explain this technical concept in the easiest possible way. If we use the grid with traditional, that you see on the left of the slide, AC/DC charging, what we do today in Europe and all over the world, we are going to use the same amount of grid power to charge the vehicle. 100 kilowatt from the grid, 100 kilowatt to charge the vehicle. Very simple. If we put, as we have done on the right part of the slide, energy storage in the equation, we convert that AC/DC charging into DC/DC charging, so that charging will require, just because of energy storage, approximately 25% of the grid power to charge the same vehicle at the same speed of charge. Or with the same power, we will be able to multiply at least by 4 times and potentially up to 6 times the number of cars that we can charge at the same time with the same grid power. In other terms, we reduce the impact of electric mobility at the grid level by 4 to 6 times, reducing the investment needed by 4 to 6 times. So having now clear what the energy transition stands for and what the priorities should be, let's have a look at what we do, how we contribute at NHOA. NHOA's play is quite simple. We essentially do 2 things. We build energy storage systems coupled with renewables, typically, to secure affordable 24/7 power, clean power. And we develop our own EV fast and ultra-fast charging network coupled with energy storage to secure a really sustainable and affordable fast charging experience. Let me say very simple, very focused, and we can now have a quick look at the details. NHOA Energy is our energy storage business line, our technology heritage. We started 15 years ago, and we historically played globally. We started from microgrids, typically in developing economies, and then following the evolution of the markets and then technology, these small microgrids coupled with small solar panels and small batteries evolved and turned into large-scale systems, like the ones that we are installing right now and all over the world. Most importantly, also here in Taiwan, where we are building for TCC, with TCC, one of the largest energy storage systems in the world with over 400 megawatt hours of capacity. You will remember when Elon Musk tweeted, "We are building the largest battery in the world." It was a few years ago. This was 100 megawatt hours. This is 4 times larger. From this map, you can clearly see what we did in 5 continents. We are going to have over 1 gigawatt hour of capacity online by 2023. So the question is, where are we today? And you can see from this picture, one of our systems recently built. We are under the commissioning phase now. You see the number of containers that are storing over 200 megawatt hours of electricity. So the one we are building in Taiwan will be at least twice this one. And you see a very complex 330,000 volts substation on the top right. We are extremely proud of being now, thanks also to the strategic and financial support of TCC, one of the leading and largest energy storage system integrators worldwide today. From the e-mobility perspective, not only we are building one of the largest EV fast charging networks and infrastructure in Southern Europe, but we have also free-to-move solutions, which is our joint venture with Stellantis, a business line devoted to further verticalize our play in e-mobility. That joint venture essentially is manufacturing charging devices from residential applications like wall boxes to public charging applications like high power chargers. And Stellantis is one of the largest car maker in the world with 21% market share in Europe and a very important positioning in the US. In the e-mobility space, we also developed a unique track record, building the largest e-mobility charging hub in the world, 100% vehicle to grid, meaning that essentially cars are at the same time charging while delivering grid services and ancillary services to grid operator, stabilizing the intermittency of renewables. In these systems, there are over 500 cars fast charging and at the same time stabilizing the European grid with over 25 megawatt hours of storage. I mean, a world premiere that has been recognized also by the European Commission. Then, as far as Atlante is concerned, so our business line devoted to the infrastructure, our network for fast and ultra-fast charging points for electric vehicles in Southern Europe, we do have clear goals. We will install and operate over 5,000 fast and ultra-fast points of charge by 2025 and 35,000 by 2030 in Italy, France, Spain, and Portugal. Then you might be thinking, where is Atlante today, despite the objectives? I think the answer is quite easy. We are really more than on track. We are accelerating. We already have over 1,300 points of fast and ultra-fast charging online and under construction, mainly in Italy and France, and progressively in Spain and Portugal. With a network strategically built around the most important cities, corridors, and industrialized areas of Southern Europe, with almost over 2,000 sites under development, which is beyond the 2025 targets that we had. Then, moving to the financial perspective, these are our results. Obviously, we naturally recorded continuous growth. Since our listing on the Euronext Stock Exchange, which is the regulated market in Europe, we constantly grew over time, with a small exception in 2020 because of COVID, as you can imagine. And after TCC acquired over 60% of our share capital, the pace and opportunities we had changed radically. And that's the reason why we are going to recognize between 140 and 160 million. This year, we already recorded over 100 million revenues as of September 30, and we are confident we will achieve the high end of our guidance, which is 160 million this year. In EBITDA terms, we are confident we will achieve break-even for sure at the NHOA Energy level. In reality, it already happened in H1. So in the first semester, we have been, I think, the first energy storage company, pure play, in the world to be profitable at the EBITDA level. Potentially also in free-to-movie solutions, but this will depend from the results of our Q4. Then we will keep on working with in mind our outlook towards over 600 million revenues in 2025 with 10% EBITDA margin, which is very prudent but very realistic, and over 1.5 billion revenues in 2030 with the ambition to achieve 15% EBITDA margin at the NHOA Energy and free-to-movie solutions level, while Atlante will generate the first 100 million revenues in 2025 and doubling the energy storage and the mobility revenues in 2030 with an over 50% EBITDA margin, given the structure, obviously, of the business. Then this is what we're doing, and given the commitment and passion we have, we firmly believe the best is yet to come, as we are clearly thinking of expanding our business and accelerating further, particularly leveraging on the vision, support, solidity, and credibility of TCC that has been a game changer in our equity story. Certainly a game changer for NHOA, for our employees, and our stakeholders, but most importantly, I genuinely think a game changer for the future of our planet. And as I believe that there is a world of people that feel the responsibility to release our foot on the accelerator towards the highway to climate hell. A world where people do not wait for things to happen. A world where people make things happen. Dear investors, analysts, and media operators, welcome to that world. Welcome to NHOA and welcome to TCC. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today, and ready to take any question you may have. So.